Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Don, who is an advanced photographer from Georgia. Don was on vacation in Paris, France, and he took this image on the Champs-Élysées, the Grand Avenue of fashion shopping, and he said this was all about telling the story of someone who was asking for money or begging, and then people just sort of seemingly walking by in a completely different reality. Don shot this with a Canon PowerShot G10. Interesting technical thing here is that Don used a built-in 3-stop neutral density filter to slow the shutter down to a 20th of a second to imply the motion in the shoppers. And he says, does this image make you stop and think about the story in the image? The person begging, the people walking by. He says, I consider making this image into black and white, but I like the red cup. Any suggestions about composition? This image definitely makes me think about the people in this story. So to me, to answer Don's question, yes, to me this is a very powerful image about story, and I get it almost right away. Not only do I really like what Don has done here with the slow shutter to end the story really suggests that not only are these people not looking or they're not connected, they are on the move, and so it just sort of adds another level of disconnect. One of the most powerful things to me about this composition from a design standpoint, if we want to talk about that relative to storytelling and not so much just is the image unified or those kinds of things, is the decision to crop off all of the faces or all of the heads of the shoppers. One of the biggest poverties that people that are homeless experience is just a disconnect from everybody else, because a lot of times, and I know I used to be a lot more like this myself, it's so scary a lot of times to see somebody that's homeless. You might give money, but you don't even look or you don't even connect. It's like just you do something and you're out of there and there's no connection. And this decision on Don's part to crop the heads out really, for me, as far as getting the story, it really drives that part of the story home. Something else that's really fascinating and also disturbing at the same time to me about this image is the scarf and what's happened here in terms of the person that's homeless, because you see a hand, then you expect to see the suggestion of a face. You get these very hard, very dark angles, and that part of the image is disturbing, and from at least for me it is, and from a design standpoint, it's sort of amazing too how it emphasizes this real powerful sense of all of these dark sort of points or triangles of energy, and that just starts to play out in a whole multitude of ways in the image, and that's really powerful. I also think these diagonals, just this angle on the walkway itself, very, very powerful. When I think about perfect world improvement for this image, I think that it could be tightened up even more. I'm constantly, when I'm looking at images that start to have areas where there's a lot of negative space, I'll start to ask myself the question, how does this negative space, play in the image relative to the other ideas? A real basic way to think about negative space is just separation for a subject. But we can also start to think about negative space shapes or areas and how they relate to the other parts of the visual design. There are a lot of different levels of thinking about positive and negative space, but for me, there's a negative space in here that really flattens out, and then when I sort of reconnect the story, it's a lot more ambiguous now. There's a guy back here that's just kind of standing there, looks like he doesn't know which way to go, and then there's some people going in the other direction. There are a couple of other people that look like they're not moving, and all these people are sort of moving in one direction, and then you have this energy, and to me down in here it's a lot simpler. Something else happens from a design standpoint. If I crop this down to somewhere like this, just real quick doing this, something else happens, which is that the negative space up here now, you get a feeling of this, again, this real strong triangle that plays out. You also get simplified on the major diagonals, so you get a repetition of that energy here, and then you have this energy moving in this direction. You have static versus movement. Something else that happens for me in this crop is that this shape gets more accentuated. The idea of the hand here and the hand here starts to get accentuated on a diagonal. The color to me gets a lot more powerful. I totally agree. Well, sorry, I said that wrong. I think Don's asking a good question, is sort of how I meant to say it about converting this to black and white. I'm always asking myself that question in pictures of people, in more documentary shots, and pictures where there's already a potentially very powerful emotional aspect to the story that's being told. But for me, when this goes to black and white, it really loses a lot of power. To me, so much of the power in the color is the red cup and the blue. And that starts to accentuate something else for me too. It's not just potentially homeless or begging and shopping and completely oblivious. There's a masculine feel to this. There's a feminine feel to this. When we crop down, we just have these two ideas. They play off of each other in so many ways, and one real powerful way they play off of each other is red and blue. And so those are just some thoughts about cropping. I definitely could see making a case for, I'm not going to do the work, but darkening this corner, bringing the shadow up again to just keep accentuating the movement of this shape, and really sort of trying to make this image more about this and here. So darkening here, maybe darkening around in here, kind of vignetting a little bit, maybe lightening here a little bit, and bringing the color up, bringing the red up. Those are just some other thoughts. I don't want to completely ignore the elephant in the room here. I don't want to preach either, but I just want to say at the end that it's just a suggestion that I have. Street photography is something that's really dear to my heart, and if you go out and you do a lot of photography on the street, you're just going to be confronted with homeless people, because that's where homeless people live. And I've found in my own photographic life just staying away from the idea of how can we make homelessness come to an end. I think that's a powerful question. But on some level, we can see across a very long period of time that no matter what the cultural paradigm is, in all animal populations, there are a certain percentage of members of that group that are not going to fit in. And for me, it becomes more about how am I going to deal with it from moment to moment. And I think a real powerful opportunity for photographers is to form a solidarity with people that are homeless. So you have a mutual exchange. And the way that I do it is when people ask me for money, if I want to take their picture, I'll say, let's do a trade. I'll pay you, but could you model for me for a few minutes or for a little while? And not only has it given me a way to connect to that part of the thread of my life instead of looking away, and I'm not judging anybody for their choice connected to this. It's a very, very, very complex idea or thing to talk about. But I know for me that it connects me to something, and it's taught me a lot in the last 4 years, and I've also made a lot of friends. And I feel like it's helped to open me up, not just creatively, but as a person, to a whole sort of subculture and a whole idea that for a long time I was afraid to look at. I was the person that might give money but not even say hello or just keep going because it freaked me out so much. Just a thought, just one more thought connected to this critique. I want to say a big thank you to Don for sharing the image for all kinds of reasons. Very, very powerful storytelling image. Love to hear your feedback about it. Huge thank you to all of you for being here and supporting The Mindful Eye. I hope to see you again real soon.